Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Smart Wife: Why Siri, Alexa, and other smart home devices need a feminist reboot, by Yolande Strengers and Jenny Kennedy, narrated by Kat Gould. Publisher's note: all figures referenced in this audiobook can be found in the print and e-book versions of this book. 1. Meet the Smart Wife. It's been a busy day. You're tired, sore and hungry. All you want to do is put your feet up, stream your favourite on-demand show and pour yourself a glass of wine. But there's still dinner to cook, homework to supervise, and tomorrow's schedule to finalise. Someone should probably do a load of laundry, and you need to put the garbage out. And if this could all happen without any drama, with all household members amiably carrying out their chores, well, wouldn't that be nice? You might also want someone to talk with and ask how your day was. Maybe you even desire something a little extra. If only there was someone or something who could do it all. Meet the Smart Wife. She's pleasant, helpful, and available at an increasingly affordable price. Millions of people from around the world are now turning to connected and robotic devices to provide the domestic, caring, and intimacy services historically delivered by real-life wives. The Smart Wife is a seemingly ingenious solution to what the political journalist Annabel Crabb poignantly terms the wife drought afflicting most advanced economies and gender-progressive nations. After all, who wouldn't want more help around the home, including, in some cases, help meeting those more sexual desires? By 2021, some industry observers predict that we will have more voice-activated assistants on the planet than people, a growth rate that outstrips the cell phone's rise to ubiquity. Domestic robots, like robotic vacuum cleaners, are already the most widely adopted computational robots in the world. The broader smart home market is also growing quickly, and predicted to ship nearly 1.6 billion devices in 2023, including home security, lighting, smart speaker, thermostat, and video entertainment products. Demand for care and sex robots is growing too, albeit more slowly. The Smart Wife is clearly a tempting idea, as well as growing reality for many residents with access to smart technology, the internet, electricity, and disposable income. But is she really a good solution to the many problems associated with life as we know it in the 21st century? Before getting into the strengths and weaknesses of our fascinating heroine, let us acquaint you with the Smart Wife properly. The wife drought that Crabb speaks of suggests we are witnessing the slow death of the wife in contemporary society, at least the wife we've known as the long-time backbone of patriarchal society. But she's having an enthusiastic comeback with a few critical upgrades. It's not wives themselves who are being asked to come back into the kitchen, but rather feminized artificial intelligence, AI, built into robots, digital voice assistants, also known as smart speakers, conversational agents, virtual helpers, and chatbots, and other smart devices. The Smart Wife comes in many forms. In fact, chances are you're already living with her. Most obvious are assistants such as Amazon's Alexa, Apple's Siri, or Google Home, which have default female voices in most markets in which they are sold. Figure 1.1. Other smart wives are anthropomorphic, zoomorphic, or automated, such as home appliances or domestic robots, most of which carry out domestic responsibilities that have traditionally fallen to wives. One Indian company has even adopted the name Smart Wife to advertise their home appliances. Smart wives can also be found in the bodies of overtly feminized and sometimes pornified sex robots or gynoids. By smart, we mean AI, internet-connected or robotic things. By wife, we refer to an enduring archetype in the collective psyche, one who can take on all forms of domestic work within the home. In the past and present, and at her most reduced, a wife has been both social construct and commodity, and viewed as the property of a man. Her roles include that of caregiver, housekeeper, homemaker, emotional labourer, provider of sexual services, and procreator of legitimate offspring. These roles are entrenched in thousands of years of patriarchy. The smart wife is figurative, not literal, although there are some examples of people actually marrying her that we'll get to later in the book. We use the term to encompass smart technology intended to carry out domestic labours traditionally associated with the wife's role, and any smart technology that is treated as a smart wife by those who interact with her. In addition, our term encompasses feminized humanoid or artificial sentient beings playing a wifely role in sci-fi and popular culture texts, the role models for real-life smart wives. The principal prototype for the smart wife's mainframe is the 1950s US housewife and her transatlantic cousin in the United Kingdom. Many contemporary societies still ache with nostalgia for this white, middle-class and heteronormative housewife, with her perfect home, breezy white linens, artfully arranged flowers, gleaming cookware and homemade meals. Wasn't she wonderful? Her charming dinner conversation, perfectly set hair, those curls, clean and quiet children, and content and successful husband certainly set the bar high for all wives who aspired to this ideal. Or at least that's the way it seems now in the relics of advertisements from the era. This wistful Wonder Woman was unlikely to take on paid work once married, unless it was to do something compatible with her role as a housewife, such as selling Tupperware. Her home was her primary domain, and she nurtured the people within it. This idolized figure still lives on in many sitcoms, and iterations of the smart wife generally. She is not our leading lady's only inspirational source code, however. Smart wives also reflect many other cultural expressions of idealized women, originating from Asian countries such as China, India, Japan and South Korea, where her reach is expanding. China now has over half of the global market share in digital voice assistants, overtaking the United States in 2019, with shipments exceeding 10 million units. Amazon and Google Home still dominate in the Chinese market, with Baidu, Alibaba and Xiaomi following close behind. A consistent theme among these culturally diverse countries' offerings and uniting smart wife markets worldwide is a set of technologies characterized as a young, demure and sexualized woman or girl who is constantly available for service. The idea of ubiquitous technology that acts like an unwearying wife might sound appealing to some people, ourselves included, but is she really the kind of stereotype we want to be returning home to? Is she actually helping our progress toward gender equity? Aside from keeping us company or ordering the groceries, what else is she doing in upholding systems of power and oppression in capitalist and patriarchal societies? What kind of future is she manifesting? And how else can we imagine her living with us? We are not the first people to ask these kinds of questions, or indeed to characterize smart technology as an often celebrated and lamented housewife. In animating our book with this fictional and provocative character, and talking about her explicitly as a woman, we follow an approach taken by other techno-feminist and digital media scholars. Notable among these are Donna Haraway, who has written extensively about the feminized cyborg figure as both woman and machine, and Kylie Jarrett, who developed the concept of the digital housewife to interrogate the unpaid consumer labour carried out by people on online communication platforms. Characterising the smart home as a smart wife is our critique and intervention into conversations about the future of domestic life, human relationships with AI, and contemporary feminism. In pursuing this character and caricature, we highlight fundamental problems with the design and marketing of smart home devices that are presented as innovative techno-fixes promising to end the wife drought, though simultaneously embodying and perpetuating outdated stereotypes of women's roles in the home. But we go further by offering our own set of proposals to emancipate and elevate the smart wife in society. While we portray the smart wife as a worrisome typecast, she is far more diverse than you might think. Here there are further parallels with the romanticised 1950s housewife, who was as much fantasy as reality. In Not June Cleaver, Professor of History and American Studies Joanne Meyerowitz and her contributors question historical accounts of the tenacious stereotype of a discontent, housebound suburban housewife who stayed home to rear children, clean house and bake cookies, promising, as the 1950s housewife did, a romance steeped in nostalgic longing for an allegedly simpler, happier, and more prosperous time. Instead, they provide diverse stories of women's roles in the home during post-war America that challenge these normative assumptions. Likewise, this book gives voice to the considerable variety of smart wives now moving into our homes in increasing numbers. We point out the problematic stereotypes depicting the smart wife's rise to popularity, showing how they potentially devalue women's traditional roles in society and exacerbate violence toward women. But equally, we tell stories of gender trouble, different cultural expressions, and the curious and strange smart wives that people are welcoming into their lives. We show that smart wives aren't just wives. They are also smart friends, servants, girlfriends, migrant workers, secretaries, mothers, sex workers, intimate companions, lovers, nannies, butlers, pets, artificial species, and more. By exploring these devices in all their various roles and guises, we provide glimpses of opportunities where smart wives could and have begun to transgress their own limitations. But first, let us explain how these myriad colourful characters are stepping in to extend a helping hand and fill various voids that people are experiencing in their lives. The wife drought. The contemporary slump in available or willing wives that Crabbe and other prominent social critics, such as Susan Mousehart, have warned contemporary societies of, is real. Marriage and partner rates are declining in many countries with advanced economies. One reason for this is that men have typically been resistant and unsupported by their employers, social expectations, and government policies to take on the household responsibilities expected of them in an equal marriage. Men stand to gain most from a happy union, even in today's gender-progressive societies, where marriage is a positively and empirically life-enhancing experience for this gender. This is not to say that men in some countries, like Japan, are not also turning away from marriage at equal numbers to women, particularly because expectations for their domestic responsibilities within marriage are growing. Simultaneously, women are generally less willing to define themselves in relation to men or the domestic sphere and are seeking other ways to fulfill themselves. Many women want wives so that they can fulfill their own aspirations too, whether that be to work, further their education, or have children. This is because wives make many other life choices possible for everyone. Why don't more women want to be wives? Let's look at it this way. Why would they? As sociologist Leah Rapana notes of Australia, when women start to cohabit, their housework time goes up while men's goes down, regardless of their employment status. In wealthy nations, an increase in female workforce participation since the 20th century began has been driven largely by married women. Strikingly, the more hours that a woman works outside the home, the more hours she is likely to spend doing housework. Or as Crabb writes, in an average Australian family, a woman will commonly behave like a housewife even if she isn't one, and a man will behave as though he's married to a housewife even when he isn't. This doesn't change when women work full-time outside the home. In fact, Australian women still typically do twice as much housework as their full-time working husbands, or 41 hours a week compared to 20, exclaims Crabb. Despite continuing gender equity progress on the home front across Europe, North America, Australia, China and Japan, and many other countries, it matters little whether the woman works a greater number of hours outside the home or earns more pay. Women still perform a greater proportion of domestic labour. No wonder, then, that divorce rates have risen in most contemporary societies, and that most of these, 2/3 to 3/4, are initiated by women. Being married is not the problem, notes Mouseheart. The problem is being a wife. The wife work that Mouseheart targets in her turn-of-the-century book on the subject doesn't stop with housekeeping. Females within marriage are strenuously, overwhelmingly, outrageously responsible for the physical and emotional caretaking of males and offspring, writes Mouseheart. Worldwide, women perform around 75% of total unpaid care and domestic labour. In 60% of Australian family households with children under the age of 15, there is a full-time working father with a part-time or stay-at-home mother. Who gets wives? Crabb asks. Dads do. In only 3% of households is this dynamic reversed, meaning that the staggering majority of people who benefit from having a housewife are male. The more senior the role of the working parent, the more likely they are to have a wife at home some or all of the time. Likewise, providing care for the elderly, particularly in the home, is more likely to fall to women in general and wives in particular. One study conducted across multiple countries estimates that between 57 to 81% of all caregivers of the elderly are women. And in most cases, these female caregivers are adult daughters or daughters-in-law of the elderly person. The wife drought and wife work also extend to the sexual contract that wives historically entered into on marriage, which required them to be sexually available to their husbands. Social changes such as women's sexual liberation and the shifting rules of consent in many societies mean that wives' bodies are no longer considered fully available to men through marriage. The criminalisation process for marital rape in the West began in the 1970s, with marital rape becoming a crime in all 50 US states in 1993, although prosecution is still fraught. More concerningly, spousal rape is still legal in at least 10 countries, with consent assumed as part of the marriage contract. In short, wife work, writes Mouseheart, is a time-consuming, energy-draining and emotionally exorbitant enterprise, and a job that violates every principle of equal opportunity employment. Given this current state of affairs in the availability, status and changing responsibilities of human wives, many people are understandably looking for a technological alternative, particularly those who are most keenly feeling the swelling absence of her services, specifically men. Mail-order brides. So who wants the smart wife? Potentially everyone. In 2016, the research firm Gartner predicted people would soon be having more conversations with bots than their spouses. Over a quarter of the adult population in the United States now owns at least one smart speaker like Alexa. That's more than 66 million people. When Apple's Siri assistant made her debut in 2011 as a sassy young woman who deflected insults and liked to flirt and serve users with playful obedience, her coming out party reached nearly 150 million iPhones in her first year. This single technology, developed behind closed doors by one company in one corner of the world with little input from women, shaped global expectations for smart wives and AI assistants more broadly in a little over 12 months. Other smart wife markets, like those for care or sex robots, have reached fewer households. Indeed, despite the media hype, until recently, sexbots were more an idea than a commercial reality, and despite predictions for expansion, the market is currently extremely niche. In terms of gendered interest and uptake, industry sales figures show that consumers of smart home devices are more likely to be male, and smart home obsessives are invariably men. Men are also more often the instigators for bringing smart home technologies into the home and managing their operation. As we have established, however, women, and the significant percentage of the world's population that is not heterosexual men, need smart wives too. Millennial women in the United States, ages 18 to 35, are particularly excited about smart home technology, and the occasional report finds that women are actually more interested in some devices than men are, such as voice assistants and some smart appliances. Narrowing down to specific markets reveals other gender differences in interest, uptake, and benefits. The vast majority of people currently interested in or buying sex robots and dolls are men. Women are understandably less enthusiastic about the penetration-oriented characteristics of most current offerings. By contrast, in the present social robot market, women stand to benefit most given that they live longer than men and therefore are more likely to suffer from debilitating conditions like dementia, which is one of the emerging applications for care robots. When it comes to the creation of smart wives, men are clearly in the lead. Men vastly outnumber women in computer programming jobs, making up over 75% of the total pool of programmers in the United States in 2017. In the field of robotics and AI, men outnumber women as well. Men comprise between 77 and 83% of the technical positions at Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and General Electric, and just over 63% at Amazon. Men make up 85% of the AI research staff at Facebook and 90% at Google. Likewise, in academic environments, more than 80% of AI professors are men, and only 12% of leading AI researchers are women. Indeed, computer science has gone backward on gender diversity in the last 30 to 40 years, with female participation in computer science degrees in the United States dropping from 37% in the early 1980s to 18% in 2016, despite a number of active campaigns and initiatives to try to turn this around. Computer science remains a discipline with low numbers of tertiary qualified women within the 36 member countries of Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. In the United Kingdom, the proportion of women in programming and software development jobs in the information and communication technologies sector dropped from 15 to 12% over the last decade. As a United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation UNESCO report on closing gender divides in digital skills depressingly puts it, the digital space is becoming more male-dominated, not less so. It hasn't always been this way. Following the Second World War, when electronic computing began to accelerate, software programming in the West was largely considered women's work. But this changed as it became clear that programming could wield significant influence over all aspects of life, and as computers started making their ways into workplaces, homes, and, more specifically, boys' bedrooms. Compounding the low numbers of women in computing is the so-called self-efficacy technology gender gap, which refers to the difference between girls' and boys' confidence and belief in their abilities. Studies show that girls are more likely to think they're worse at computing, even when they're no different or, in some cases, better at computing studies than boys. This is partly due to boys being historically brought up to believe that they should be naturally good at technology, whereas girls are more commonly socialised in the opposite direction. Yet it is also due to other dynamics, such as a protracted history of the gendering of technology as either masculine, think brown goods like TVs and remote controls, or feminine, think white goods like fridges. So potent is the gendered imbalance in computing that the journalist, producer and author Emily Chang labelled the coding culture of Silicon Valley as brotopia. She draws attention to the biased recruitment strategies of Silicon Valley tech companies, the members of which historically profiled and mostly hired typical male geeks, while more recently setting their sights on overconfident and charismatic men who could follow in the footsteps of information technology, IT, heroes like the late Steve Jobs. In addition, the AI industry has been called out by leading academics and commentators like Kate Crawford and Jack Clark for having a white guy problem in an industry characterised by a sea of dudes. Indeed, the AI Now Institute has identified a diversity crisis perpetuated by harassment, discrimination, unfair compensation, and lack of promotion for women and ethnic minorities. The Institute recommends that the AI industry needs to make significant structural changes to address systemic racism, misogyny, and lack of diversity. This gender and racial imbalance filters down to the ways in which technologies are imagined and created. Scholars such as Sophia Umoja-Noble have written about the algorithms of oppression that characterize search engines like Google, which reinforce racism and sexism. Likewise, web consultant and author Sarah Wachter-Becher discusses the proliferation of sexist apps emerging from the masculine culture of Silicon Valley. There has also been considerable criticism levelled at digital voice assistants like Alexa, Siri and Google Home, and other types of smart wives for their sexist overtones, diminishing of women in traditional feminized roles, and inability to assertively rebuke sexual advances. For example,
sample complete. Ready to continue?